So thank you everyone for coming today. My name is Brandon Grant. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at QuoteWerks. And today we're going to be going through the QuoteWorks Year in Review webinar. For those of you that haven't been to this webinar before, basically we take the major features that we released from the previous year, so in this case 2020, and we'll actually go through how to use them, what they do, that type of thing. And then I'll also be covering some smaller features that you may have missed throughout the year, because obviously we released a lot of features, so it's hard to keep up with all that. So we'll be covering those as well. For those of you that are new to the webinars, you will see in the GoToWebinar toolbar, there's a questions box. So if you have questions about any of the features we're discussing today or QuoteWorks in general, feel free to post your questions in there. I'll typically circle back at the end of the webinar and answer those for you. So if you have questions and I don't answer your question immediately, just sit tight. I will circle back at the end of the webinar. If for some reason we run out of time and I can't get to everyone's questions, we will follow up offline as well. If you do have a question and you'd rather me follow up with you offline, via email or phone call, just put your contact information with your question as well, and we can follow up that way as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So just to kind of give you an overview, today we're going to have a short PowerPoint presentation, just 10 or 12 slides that we're going to go through pretty quickly. But then we'll actually go through a live demonstration of those features from this previous year. And then I'll circle back to any of those questions that you guys posted in that questions box. So to kind of go over 2020 release summary, we released over 164 new features. We actually had 6 build releases. If any of you are interested in seeing every single feature that we released throughout the year, and there are actually some of you out there, we'll be posting that link in the follow-up email. So once we have this recording posted to the website, we'll actually do an email blast and share that link with everyone. And we'll make sure that we include that link so you can see every single feature that was added. So if you want to go by one and see what's been added in the last year, you'll be able to do that. So we're going to start with our integration updates. Essentially, if you are using a CRM or PSA that QuoteWorks integrates with, we've probably made some type of change to it. For a lot of them, it's just version updates, supporting the latest versions, such as like Maximizer CRM 2020 R2 and R1, ConnectWise 2020.3.2.1. We also added MS CRM OAuth 2 support. That was actually in the very latest release, version 5.6. For those of you that are using QuickBooks 2021, we added support for that in the US, Canada, UK, and Asia Pacific, I believe. And then Sage 50 2021 support, that is US only though. For those of you on Sugar CRM, we did add support for versions 9.3 through 10.2. And we also added support for Act4Web version 22 support. For those of you that are using Salesforce.com, we added a bunch of new features this year. So you'll be able to see those on the updates page. But there's a lot of new features that you can take advantage of if you're using Salesforce.com as your CRM. Same thing for Autotask users. We added quite a few new features for Autotask users as well, and ConnectWise. So if you're using any of those CRMs or PSAs, you'll want to make sure you update to the latest version because you'll have access to all that stuff. As always, all these features available in these integrations available in Chapter 9 of the help file. So if you need help getting that set up or just have questions about the functionality, you can always go there, or obviously you can always contact us as well. So what's new? One of the big things we did in 2020 was our Cassaya Bms Integration. This has full integration capability, so you're able to search contacts, create and update opportunities, link to product sources, schedule follow-ups, and a lot more. So a lot of functionality there. It is only available in the corporate edition. So if you're interested in using the Cassaya Bms integration, you will need to be on the corporate edition of QuoteWorks. If you are using QuoteWorks Web and you've been waiting for the integration, it is available in QuoteWorks Web as well. So as long as you're on the corporate edition, and if you have QuoteWorks Web, you'll be able to use the Cassaya Bms integration in QuoteWorks Web, and it is the full integration in QuoteWorks Web as well. So if it can do it in the desktop, it can do it in QuoteWorks Web also. Layouts, covers, and literature access rights. So this is from version 5.6, and essentially what this allows you to do is set access rights for any cover page, layout, or literature file in your installation. This just provides a lot more flexibility for you with how you control the documents that are available to your reps or to yourself. So you can only have documents that are available to be used for the output for your customer uh, that you choose. So it just provides a lot more flexibility for you. And we're going to walk through how to set that up. And it's basically going through and controlling those view modify rights by an individual user, or you can set it up for a group. It also helps simplify the deliver window. So if you have a lot of layouts that you don't really use anymore and you just want to hide them so they don't display anymore, but you don't necessarily want to delete them, you'll be able to do that. So we're going to walk through how to set that up today. Show hide grid toolbar icons. So for those of you who are not familiar with the grid toolbar is on your document items tab in QuoteWerks. This is where you can see essentially just shortcuts to specific features in QuoteWorks. This provides just a really easy way to utilize these features, so you're not having to like right click and then look in the edit menu or tools menu for it. You can simply click on the icon. So we're going to go through some of those today, but there's a lot of features on there that may not be something that you use in your organization. So you do have the option to hide specific ones that you're not using or you don't want your reps to use. So we'll walk through how to use that today. And it's a per user setting, so it's easy to customize on a per user basis in your installation. Applying multi-line changes. So this is a new one. I believe this came out in build 5 of version 5.5. And essentially what apply multi-line changes is it allows you to make multiple changes to your items at once. So if you have, let's say 3 items and you want to update the unit price to $150 from $100 or whatever they're set at, you can now do that. So you'll be able to select multiple items, choose which column you want to update, and then apply those changes. So I'm going to show you how to do that today, but it's a really nice time-saving feature to allow you to make changes to multiple items at once, especially any of you that are very template heavy in the way you use QuoteWorks. So you always have a lot of the same items on the document. You'll be able to select the items you want to make changes to, select the column, and make that and apply those changes. So we'll walk through how to do that in QuoteWorks. Pay full amount in quote valet. So this was a heavily requested feature for a lot of you that are using Quote Valet, where you wanted to still be able to offer your clients the ability to pay just the deposit or a specific amount that you've set. But you also wanted to give them the option of paying the full amount up front so that they could do either or. So we added that functionality. It's just a little checkbox that you have to set to enable. So we'll walk through how to set that as well, but very, very easy to do. And you'll be able to give your customers the option to either pay that full amount or they can pay the deposit or both. For you Eatalize users, we added a lot of functionality in Eatalize in this last release. So we actually added new folders. So you can actually create folders and subfolders and a new public favorites folder. The public favorites folder is where you can actually share items with other users in your organization. So we've had a lot of companies that had requested to be able to, they build an item list essentially in their My Favorites, and they wanted to share that with other users in their organization. They didn't have a way to easily do that. So now you can easily do that using the public favorites folder. And I'll show you how to set that up. And additionally, we added the folder and subfolder support. So you're able to kind of like itemize and categorize your various items that you're saving in these favorites folders in Eatalize. Excel-like quote navigation. So this one is maybe not something that you would have really recognized unless you're kind of pretty heavy user in QuoteWorks. What this has done is just makes it a lot easier to maneuver around the quote workbook. So on that document items tab, you can more easily change fields by using like tab and enter and the arrow keys to navigate, just like you would in Excel. So we tried to mimic that functionality as much as possible, just since so many people are familiar with Excel and use Excel on a daily basis. Now you can move through fields very simply. Really, the only difference is that if you're in the description field, so like the item description, the customer facing description, if you click enter, it just does another line in that same description field. It doesn't drop down to the next one, so you'd have to use the down arrow instead. That's really the only difference, but we'll walk through some of those changes there and kind of how you can use that in QuoteWorks. Okay, now we're getting into the quote importers. So we were very busy with the quote importers. So for those of you that are using Ingram Micro, Tech Data, and Cinex, we actually added support for your specific distributor, or we updated it. So in this case, Tech Data, we already had a quote importer. Tech Data is adding some new functionality, some new APIs. So we actually added support for their new functionality. They call it JSON support. Right now it's USA only. It's kind of like the beta test. So the other one's still in there. This is the one that's going to be released essentially worldwide. But as of right now, we added that one, and that'll basically allow you to search for quotes that begin with a 1 or a 4 from Tech Data and pull those directly into QuoteWerks. And then if you are CCW users, if you have a CCW account, you'll actually be able to pull those CCW quotes from Tech Data directly into QuoteWerks as well. You do have to link your account in Tech Data, so there's some instructions in the help file you'll want to make sure you follow first in order to use this functionality, but that's going to be available for you. Ingram Micro, so USA and Canada, very, very simple to use. You do need to set this up in Ingram Micro as well. There's some instructions in the help file for this. But basically, once you have it set up, you'll be able to search for quotes by the quote number, and you'll also be able to just see a list of the last, I think it's 40 quotes from your last 45 days in your account, and you can pull those in also. And again, very, very easy to use. Once you find the quote, it's an automatic import directly into QuoteWerks. And then finally, Cinex quote importer, also very simple to use. You'll be able to search for quotes by the quote number. This is automatically available in the integration, so there's actually no setup for this one. So if you already have your Cinex credentials in QuoteWerks, if you update to the latest version of QuoteWerks, you'll automatically have access to the Cinex quote importer. So you'll be able to search for those quotes and pull them directly into QuoteWerks. As always, if you do have questions, make sure you post them in the questions box. I do see that there's quite a few people who joined a few minutes after we began. So I am going to circle back to your questions at the end of the session today. If for those of you that do have to leave early, or if someone from your team was unable to make it, we are recording this and we're going to post it on the website. So just so you're aware. We are active on social media, so Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you're following us there, and you can see when we add new content. We add, we're always putting up like new tips and tricks when webinars are, when new videos are available, as well as any additional information about new releases and things of that nature as well. And then finally, for any of you that are looking for resources, we're obviously always available by phone and email. Be happy to answer any questions you have. But we do have a ton of resources on the website as well. So if you are looking for like the help documentation, that's a great place to see the help file, which is going to provide you with essentially every feature in QuoteWerks. We also have user forums, which is a great place to interact with other QuoteWerks users. So you can sign up there. It's free to sign up. And then obviously our videos great place to see kind of live specific features that are available in QuoteWerks. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch gears. So we're going to actually switch over to QuoteWerks. All right. And the first thing we want to talk about are those access rights for those covers, the layouts, and literature. So it's a pretty big feature request that we had received a lot of. So we wanted to go ahead and kind of show you how that's going to be set up in QuoteWerks, how you're going to use that. So for those of you who haven't seen this feature yet, when you click on your Deliver window in QuoteWerks, this is going to load every file that you have. Now, this is my training installation, so I have all sorts of various layouts, cover pages, literature files, all that's available. So we can actually simplify this, and you can choose which users in your installation have access to specific files. So this is useful not only for just kind of simplifying your deliver window, but it's also really useful if you have multiple companies using the same installation of QuoteWerks. Maybe some of your reps are specific to a specific product line, and so there's a specific verbiage that they need to include, and you only want them to see those and not ones for another product line. This is a way you can utilize this feature. So the first thing you'll need to do is actually turn it on. It's not turned on by default. So what you'll have to do is in QuoteWerks, as the administrator, you'll click on Tools, Options, and then we're going to click on our Security tab. And then there's a checkbox that says Enable Individual Resource Security. And when you do that, it's going to bring up a window that's going to let you know that essentially when you have master rights or when you're an administrator and you make this change, essentially everything in your deliver window is going to be hidden. So that can be quite jarring for the first time if you're not ready for it. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then once it saves my options here and it updates my installation, I can click on my deliver window and it's only going to display either documents that have access rights set for them, which I think I already have a couple, or it's going to display none. So if you haven't done this before, when you click on the deliver window, your documents may actually be blank. You may not actually have any documents visible here. So you can see I've actually added access rights, but I had a whole list, probably 20, 30 layouts in here, and now there's only 4. So it's a much more manageable list for me. So a couple things. When you have enabled this security setting, the first thing you'll want to do is enter administration mode. Entering administration mode will let you view all the files that you have available. So you can see here when you click it, for my example, since I have so many, it's going to take a second to load them all. So this is going to load all the files that I have available. Once you load those, you'll see next to the name, if it's not in red, that means that you have supplied user rights to it. So in this example, I have a couple layouts. So I have 5 users or groups who have access to these particular files. The ones in red don't have any, so they're not appearing in anyone's list. And to make any adjustments to them, it's as simple as right-clicking on one of them and choosing Set Access Rights. And that'll bring up a list of all my users where I can go through and make any changes. So I can choose who has access to view it, who has access to modify it, any of those user rights I can select. You can also use the select all buttons and the deselect all if you want to deselect anyone. If you apply rights to a group, then everyone in that group will have access to it. So if you are utilizing groups in QuoteWerks, you'll be able to take advantage of doing that. If not, you can go set up your groups in QuoteWorks if you like. If not, you can simply pick and choose which users you want to have access to the specific setting. You can also do multiple users at once, or I'm sorry, multiple layouts at once. So if you just hold Control on your keyboard and select multiple layouts, right click, set access rights, you're going to message basically saying, hey, you've selected multiple files. So what you set here will be applied to all 3 of these files. So if we selected, we'll just say our executives and our inside sales team and our outside sales team, and then click OK. That's going to update these 3 layouts with those settings. So they'll have the same number of users available. So in this case, 4 for those particular layouts. So now if I exit administration mode, this will go back and it'll hide any of those files that don't have users set up to view those. So it's a really easy way to kind of just simplify your deliver window so you only have layouts that you're actively using, but you don't actually have to remove them from the system. Or if you have multiple layouts for multiple users because they sell different items, you can set that up as well. Same thing on your cover page tab. The cover page tab is just going to work a little differently. So if we click on the drop down, we'll see I just have my 2. But if I enter administration mode, this will load all the cover page files that I have available. Now, since the cover page, you can only have one at a time, and we have our drop down here, what you would do is click a cover page. So we'll just choose our Galaxy cover page here, and then you click on the access rights button right there. So that's really the only difference. Instead of right clicking, you're simply selecting this button since it's a drop down menu. And again, the same thing, you would just choose who has access to view this particular document. And then once you've set that, it'll be available there. You can click administration mode, and then any user that has been set up to view that particular cover page, that'll show up here in their drop-down list. And then finally, literature tab. This is going to work again the same way, where you're going to click on administration mode, see a list of all the literature files you have available, and then you can specify which users have access to view which specific ones. So for example, if I wanted to say, let's go ahead and give access rights to our inside sales and our outside sales, click OK. We'll see that 3 groups or 3 users have access to it. And if we click unclick administration mode, that will hide any files that we don't have access to. So I do have access to it, so it stayed in there. So now I'm able to use that particular document if I want to. If you start using this and you decide you want to, you don't want to use this anymore, and you want to turn it off, you can simply go back into that Tools Options menu and uncheck that security option, and it will revert QuoteWerks back to its original state. So you'll see all the layouts, all the cover pages, all the literature files, that type of thing. Couple of things to note about when using this feature. This is a administration feature only, so it's for master rights users or users with master rights, so the administrator or anyone you've set up as a master rights user. However, you can set up an access right, so there is a security setting. If you have like a power user in QuoteWerks, if you want to give them access to maintain this, maybe have someone that's specifically in charge of the layouts, you can give a user that's not an administrator access rights to set that up. That's done under the utilities, user maintenance. So let's say I wanted to give Jen access to administer those files. We can go to the access tab for her, and there's a checkbox that says non-master rights user can administer deliverables, and that's the one that we would want to set. So we'd want to set that for Jen, and then she'll actually be able to choose which users have access to which specific files in QuoteWerks. So just something to think of there if you want to use it that way as well, if you want to assign this to be someone's responsibility. Okay. Next thing I wanted to talk about, kind of on the same spot of kind of like access rights and viewing specific features in QuoteWerks. We have our grid toolbar. So we talked about this in the slideshow, basically saying, hey, if you wanted to hide specific features or functionality on the grid toolbar, you can do that. So for those of you that are not aware, this is the grid toolbar. It's all these icons here. If you're running an older version of QuoteWerks, so if you're not on version 5.6, your grid toolbar may be off to the side. That's fine. It's the exact same functionality. You just won't be able to make the changes that I'm about to make until you're on 5.6. But if there's a lot of features in here you're not using, or you simply don't want to give access to one of your particular reps, you're able to specify that in QuoteWerks. So the way we're going to do that is click on Utilities, User Maintenance, and then we're just going to select My User, so the administrator. Click at it here. And then if we go to our Menus tab, you'll actually see there's a Grid Toolbar menu option. And if we expand that menu, you'll see a list of all the features under the Grid Toolbar. So if there's any of these you're not using, so let's say I'm not using the, we'll say I'm not using the invert row selection, and we'll just pick what we're about to use, and we'll say the shipping ones, and then click OK. And then before I close out of here, so the ones I turned off were the 2 shipping options here, and then also my invert row selection, which is this one. So those 3 icons will actually disappear. So you can see here my grid toolbar actually shrinks in size because those features are no longer available. So that's a per user setting. So you can go into your installation, and if you're the administrator, you can make those changes for another user. I'm going to go ahead and add those back to me just so I have them available if I need them. But you can quickly go through and make those adjustments. If you're not using any of them, you can just uncheck to make it easier on yourself. Just uncheck the grid toolbar option, and that would hide all of them. So if you're like, oh, we're not using any of those, we don't need those, we can have them. I would say definitely at least leave the last 2 if you're not using them, just the undo and redo. It's nice to have the shortcuts up here sometimes. The shortcut keys do work, like Control-Z and Control-Y for undo and redo. But I just recommend having those available as well, so that way you have at least them up here in case you need them. And you can see once I added them back in, they show back up under my grid toolbar. So that is a per user setting, so you can choose who in your installation has access to that functionality as well. On the grid toolbar, this is also where you're going to find your quote importers. So if you're using Ingram Micro, Tech Data, Cinex, this is where you're going to be able to import those quotes. So for the users in the USA, you'll actually see 4 options now. If you click on the Tech Data dropdown, you have the Tech Data Excel quote. So we'll still import that. So if you're still getting your quotes from Tech Data via Excel, that's fine. You'll be able to import those still. Same thing with the SAP quote. So if you're getting the quote number, you'll be able to pull that SAP quote, enter in the SAP quote number from tech data, search, and you'll be able to pull that in and then select the one you want to import. What's new is going to be the JSON, and this installation is not set up for that, but you can see it's going to be very straightforward. Basically put in the credentials to activate this, and this is USA only right now. But this will allow you to import those quotes from tech data that start with a 1 or a 4, so either one. And then if you have your CCW account linked with your tech data account, you'll be able to import your CCW quotes via tech data directly into QuoteWerks as well. So very easy to use, not too much setup, especially for the tech data side of things where you just need to kind of update your account. In the QuoteWerks help file, we do have instructions on how to set that up, so just make sure you follow those. And if you have any questions, just let us know. We're always happy to help. Same thing for Ingram Micro. If you're using Ingram Micro, and I just have a test install, so mine's in the sandbox mode. But this will allow you to import quotes from Ingram Micro. And same thing as tech data, you can put in your specific quote number. So if you know the Ingram Micro quote number, you can just type it in and search for it. You can also request quotes from Ingram Micro. So if you have, or if you want to see your quotes from the last 45 days, you can do that, and you can actually pull those quotes directly into QuoteWerks. Simply select the quote. It'll load the information on the right-hand side, and then you would simply click import to pull it into QuoteWerks directly. No, we're going to wait for that to close, I guess. So you'll see here, there's a quote, and then you click import, and it'll bring it into the quote. Same thing for Cinex. If you know the quote number, I actually have a quote number for this one, so I can show. You'll just put in your Cinex quote number, and this will load up that quote, and then you'll be able to import it directly into QuoteWerks as well, and it'll just import it in. Actually, we'll go ahead and we'll just create a new quote real quick, and we'll pull that in just so you can see what it looks like. They all work the same between tech data, Ingram Micro, Cinex. So once you import it, it'll all look very similar. So your vendor will be set, vendor part number will be pulled in, your unit cost, all that, and then you can set how you want to mark it up as well. If you want to use the Cinex quote importer to pull in a quote and then pull in a quote from tech data or from Ingram Micro or from Dell, that's fine. You can use all of them on the same quote in QuoteWerks if you want. So if you're creating kind of like a master quote for a customer where you're pulling from different vendors and you had the vendors creating the quotes for you and then you're just importing them into QuoteWerks, you can do that into a single quote. You don't have to just use Cinex only on this quote and then send that to the customer. You can consolidate all your quotes into to one QuoteWerks quote. So very, very easy to use. Really nice thing about the Cinex quote importer is there is no setup. So if you already have your Cinex credentials set up in QuoteWerks, you just need to update to the latest version, and then you'll see that icon will be available for you on the grid toolbar in QuoteWerks. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about was a feature we released a few months ago was the apply multi-line changes. So this is something that's been asked for a while as well, where basically you wanted to be able to make adjustments to a specific column in this document. So let's say for these, we'll say these 3 items, I wanted to update the unit price just to $400. So I'm going to sell these 3 items to $400. Well, before you'd either have to set the price modifier and kind of figure it out, or just go to each one and type in the price. Now what you can use is the apply multi-line changes feature. So there's a couple different ways to do it. You can launch it directly from the grid toolbar here, so it's a nice little shortcut. And this will open up that apply multi-line changes window. And then you simply select which column you want to make the changes to. So whichever line items you have selected. So for instance, we want to change the unit price. So we'll scroll down to unit price. And then we say we want to change it to 500 and hit apply. And that'll change it to $500. This will also give you a little note saying that, hey, we changed this to $500. There's also some other shortcuts in there as well. So if you wanted to just like add 10% to that unit price, you could do that. We could say plus 10% and apply, and it'll mark it up 10% across those selected lines. Same thing if you wanted to like add just like $10 to each one, you could do plus 10, and it would add just $10 to each one. So There's some functionality there. It works the same thing if you wanted to subtract 10%. So instead, if I just use dash dash, that'll actually deduct it 10% from the current one. If you want to add 15% to one, you can do that. So a lot of flexibility for doing that, and it works with other columns. So for instance, maybe on my item type column, I wanted to change the item type to hardware, and it's already been set there. And you can see it'll update it to hardware. So that's really useful if you're using any of the CRMs or PSAs where that item type field is important. So Autotask, ConnectWise, Cassaya, even Salesforce to a lesser extent, where you want to be able to set those item types and make changes to that, you can do that. Same thing with descriptions. If you wanted to change descriptions across multiple lines, you could do that. If you wanted to update vendors, I know that's a big one too, where if you wanted to say, hey, I want to change the vendor across all three of these to, we'll just call it QuoteWerks for this one, we can update those vendors. So there's a lot of things you can do with the apply multi-line changes, and you can use it in conjunction with other features. So for a lot of companies, they use the select special. So if you don't know about the select special, if you click on edit, there's an option for select special, which will allow you to highlight specific items in the document based on a criteria that you set. So for instance, if my description begins with, we'll say, Trip light's good because I have a few in here. I'll click OK. QuoteWerks will automatically highlight those for you. Then you could click on OK. And for those, I want to update my unit cost to 500. Click Apply. Keep the original price modifier. And that'll change my unit cost on those three items for me automatically. So there's a lot of different ways you can use that, but it's a really nice time-saving feature where you can make changes to multiple items at once without having to go through and select each one, make the change, then select the next one, make the change, so on. Especially with anyone with larger quotes, if you have a couple hundred items in a quote, that can be a really time-consuming task. So that can really help kind of simplify that process. So that feature is also available in the edit menu. So I think it's easiest just to click on the apply multi-line changes on the grid toolbar since it's right there. But if you go under, it might be under tools actually now that I think about it. Yeah. Oh yeah, apply multi-line changes. So it is under edit. That's available here as well. And like I said, that's just an extra click. So you have to click on edit and then click on it instead of just clicking on the shortcut. So I recommend the shortcut for using that feature. It's just a little faster that way. Along the same lines, you do have the option to edit the quantities using shortcut options as well. So we added that. So the way I just kind of added to the unit price where we said, okay, we want to add 500, 10, whatever. You can do the same thing with the quantity. So if you wanted to just say, hey, plus 3, you can do that and it'll add 4. So there's some shortcuts there in the quantity as well. You can also use the multi-line or the multi-line change feature to edit the quantity as well. That column's available in that drop-down also. So if you wanted to change multiple quantities at once, you can do that. And that kind of brings me to the next feature, which is the Excel grid-like navigation that we kind of talked about. So this is going to make things a lot easier for a lot of you when you are working in a document and if you want to make changes. So maybe I want to change this quantity to 4 and this one to 3, this one to 2, and this one to 4, and this one to 4. You can go through and just make those changes. And I'm just using the down arrow to navigate through those. Same thing if you go into the description column, you'll notice that once I clicked over, it automatically highlighted it. So if you want to change the text, you can do that. So a couple things to note, if I just start typing in here, it's going to save over what was already in there, which you can always undo. But when you click in the description field, and actually any of the fields, it's automatically going to highlight it for you. So it's easier for you to make changes. So you're not having to like highlight it and then make the change. For the description, if you just click on the shift right, so hold down the shift key and then right, it'll put the cursor here. And you can add the text afterwards, or if you click on shift left, it'll let you put the cursor at the front. So there's a couple of shortcuts in the description field how it's a little different. And then once you're done in there, you can simply use the down arrow to move to the next line if you'd like. Using the tab or the right key will let you move across columns as well. And again, it's going to highlight the fields that are editable. So if you want to make a change to something, you'll be able to do that. So if I wanted to adjust this to, cost is $50, I can do that. And then once you're in a column, if you want to make changes to multiple items in the columns, you're able to do that. So it's a small change for a lot of you, but it will make moving and editing items in your documents much, much faster. Kind of feel like between that and the multi-line changes in QuoteWerks, it just makes it a smoother experience when you're actually going through and needing to make adjustments in the software. So, and then finally, last thing I wanted to mention was we added a new feature. This is really, really useful for the template users. For a lot of you that are really rely on templates, was that for a lot of users, they like to put zero quantities for items that they're not selling. So you load it from a template and say, hey, okay, this customer doesn't need that, that, and that. So those items actually have zero quantity because you've gone through and set the quantity for all the other items. There's a little shortcut here where you can now delete zero quantity items. And you don't even have to highlight them. QuoteWerks will actually look to see if any of these any quantity items are available. If you want to just delete just the two that are highlighted, or just the ones that are highlighted, you simply highlight them and then you can say delete zero quantity, and it'll say yes, and it'll remove those from the quote for you. So it's a real easy way to make those adjustments and kind of speed things up in your document kind of as you're working on. So just a couple things that are useful on this document item screen, since this is where a lot of you are going to live inside of QuoteWerks. Okay, I think that's what we wanted to cover on the document items window here. So the next thing we wanted to work on was Eatalize. So for those of you that are using Eatalize, you're going to see some new options in here. So the first thing is you'll see two new folders. The first one's going to be the public favorites. This is where you can share and save items for anyone in your organization. So anyone that is using Eatalize in your organization, if you want to create an item list for yourselves, you'll be able to do that. You still have the My Favorites, which is specific to your user, but now you also have the public favorites, which is going to be for everyone in your organization. And you see if I click on that there, it's going to load up all of those items in my public favorites folder. So to add an item to the favorites, to your My Favorites or public favorites, can be very, very simple. When you found an item, whether you're doing an Eatalize search or it's from one of these other folders, simply right click on it and you'll see there's an option that says associate one selected item, since I only have one selected, with an Eatalize favorites folder. And you'll click on that, and then that'll open up this Eatalize window. And now I've already created some folders and subfolders, but you'll be able to select which folder you want to drop this in. So this one's already associated with it, so I'm not going to do it. But you would simply select the folder and then click OK, and it'll save that item in there. So if we expand the public favorites, you'll see that I've already created a subfolder for notebooks and then various options for the type of notebooks that we're selling. And then I have a couple other folders for the services and switches that we offer through Eatalize as well. To add a new folder, you simply right click and choose new. So if I wanted to include, like, do one for monitors, that'll create one for monitors. And if I wanted to do a subset in monitors, you would click on the monitors folder, right click, new. And we could say, like, we only sell Dell monitors, so we'll put Dell in there. And you'll see, so you can break it out. So you can really go through and organize items that you sell from Eatalize. Same thing with the My Favorites. If you're using My Favorites, you can set that up. Same thing. So I've set one up for TVs and then Samsung. And if I wanted to add other categories or brands, I can do that. You can delete folders as necessary as well. So if I wanted to come in here and remove this folder, you can rename it, you can delete it, you can cut the items from it. There's a lot of functionality within these folders, but it just provides an easy way to kind of organize that. If you search for an item in Eatalize, so if we go into Eatalize here, and we'll find the first item we find, we'll go ahead and we'll add. This will allow you to once we load here. So if I wanted to add this item, again, right click, associate one selected item. If you're not sure, you can select multiple items just by holding control on your keyboard. So you can select multiple items, and then it'll say, do you want to associate those 3 selected utilize items? So I do, and we'll say we're going to add it to our, say our switches in our public. Click OK. And it's going to go through and add those 3 items to that folder for me. And it's just loading the information in there right now. In addition to the favorites and the My Favorites folder, we also added the Workspace. So for those of you that use, and there's my confirmation that that was added. So for those of you that use QuoteWerks Web, you might have seen the Workspace before, but for those of you that haven't, the Workspace is essentially a temporary holding space for your items in Edeleye. So if you are, if you're going to start using these folders and these subfolders in Edeleye, it might be really useful while you're searching for those items to go ahead and add them to your workspace. And the workspace is just supposed to be a temporary spot to hold those items until you're kind of ready to organize them. So maybe you're waiting for the sign off for someone to say, yes, go ahead and add those to the folder, or you're not sure how they're supposed to be categorized properly, but you don't want to have to go start your search over to find these items. You can store them in the workspace, and then you can simply move them over later. So you'll see when we go to our search here, just bring it back up. Once our search loads, you'll see the when we select an item or multiple items, this workspace with the little plus sign there, that will allow us to add one or multiple items to the workspace. So we can see there, add utilize item to workspace. So we'll go ahead and we'll add that to the workspace. And if we click on workspace now, we'll see that our items are in there that we added. And then from here, if I wanted to add those and move them to a folder, very, very simple. You just right click and choose the folder, just like you did before, and choose where you want that item to appear in the folder. If you decide you're not going to use the item, you can simply remove it from the workspace just by selecting the item and then choosing the remove from workspace icon. So very easy to use, but some really useful functionality on the utilize side of things, just to make it a little easier to organize and kind of utilize QuoteWerks in this way. Okay. Moving on. So we talked about setting the deposit in Quote Valet and saying, hey, I want the customer to be able to pay the full amount or the remaining balance. So this is where that checkbox is. So your deposit is set down here at the bottom left. And if you click on the ellipsis button from the document items window, that'll open up the deposit. So I have mine set to the full amount. But if I wanted to say, hey, this customer can pay 20% down, or they can pay the full amount, I just need to include that checkbox and click OK. And all that's going to do is tell Quote Valet that the customer has the option of paying the deposit amount or the full amount. They can do either or. So it just provides some more flexibility. That's how you can do it on the fly. If you want to permanently turn this setting on, so you want all your quotes where the customer is going to pay the deposit or the full amount, you can do that. It's done under the Tools Options menu. And just go to your deposit amount here on the Documents tab under the General tab. So the General tab here, and then Deposit Amount. And then you'll see the checkbox here. And if you turn on that checkbox, that will be the default for all your quotes moving forward. So just something to keep in mind, that if you make this change, it's going to be for everyone in your installation. If you just want it on a document by document basis, then you'll want to do the deposit required setting instead. So, but that'll allow your users or your customers to choose whether they're going to pay the deposit amount or if they're going to pay the full amount of the document, instead of you having to kind of guess or decide for them instead. All right. I see there's a lot of questions, so like I said, we are going to circle back to those. The last thing I wanted to show of kind of like the major features is in the purchasing module, and it's just the ability to re-export a PO. So once you've sent a PO over to, in this example, QuickBooks, if something's changed, maybe an item was no longer available by the time you actually got to placing the order, or maybe you actually had the pricing wrong, or the vendor was wrong, or whatever it is, but you need to resubmit that PO over to either QuickBooks, Sage 50 US Edition, or ConnectWise or Autotask, all you'll have to do is find the purchase order in QuoteWorks and right click on it, and you'll see there's an option that says re-export to PO, or re-export PO to, and this example is QuickBooks because that's what I have set up as my purchase order integration. And this will resend that PO from QuoteWorks into your CRM or PSA system that you're using for POs or QuickBooks or Sage 50. So it's just a nice little feature to have just to kind of help things, smooth things along when mistakes have been made, or just these POs need to be updated properly. With something has changed, you can quickly and easily resubmit it over to those systems. So just something to keep in mind. It will update the PO in QuoteWorks, so it'll actually change the PO number in QuoteWorks because we're basically saying, hey, that PO has changed, so it's a new PO number. So we actually assign it a new PO number in QuoteWorks too. And there's no setup with that feature; it's just available. So you simply right-click on that purchase order, and you're able to send it over. Okay, in the last couple minutes, before I get to questions, there's just some other small features that I wanted to mention, but things that can be really useful. Going back to those of you that use templates, because I know there's quite a lot of you. If we go into our open window here and then click on the template tab, you'll see there's actually a template name now. So there's actually search functionality. So if you use a lot of templates in QuoteWorks, you're actually able to search by the template name. So you can put in the what it begins with, what it contains. We can also search by specific fields. So if you're not sure what the template name was, but but it has this specific item, part number or whatever, so you could actually say, search an item field, and we want to search by the manufacturer part number and begins with, and we'll just say, oh, I don't know if I have one for ABC, but you'd be able to put in the part number there. Let's see. No, I don't have any templates that have this in there, but you can basically specify how you want to find a specific template. So very, very useful for any of you that are heavy template users. Also useful if there's like a specific item you're no longer selling and you need to update the template with the new one. You can actually do a search on any template that has that specific part number and then open them up, replace it with the new template, save it, and repeat as necessary for any of the other ones. So it's a nice little feature there for searching. For most of you that are using templates, just being able to search on the template name alone, that'll be really useful as well. We can also search on header fields. So we can search on the item field, so like the unit price, the description of the item, the manufacturer part number. But you can also search on other fields, like the sold to, if one set, or a specific created day, a custom text field, anything like that. So you have a lot of functionality and a lot of fields that you're able to search on for finding these templates and making changes as needed. The other thing I wanted to show you, for those of you that use revisions in QuoteWorks, the revision is a way that you can essentially track multiple versions of the same document. So if you send a quote to a customer, they ask for changes, you want to track that revision, you can use the revision icon. Well, when you do that, we now give you the option. You always had the option of deleting the previous, so you just only have the one copy of the most recent. But if in case you want, for history purposes, need to go back to the original, you'll have that. We also provided the option to update the expiration date. So before, it would just essentially copy the document and leave everything the same from whatever changes you had made. Now you can also have it update the expiration date so that and it'll essentially use your macro, your default. So for a lot of you, that's 30 days. So it'll reset it to 30 days from today. So if you are updating a revision of, maybe an expired quote or something like that, you can automatically have it update the expiration date. So just a little shortcut icon, or a little shortcut checkbox there that's really useful. And then finally, something that quite a few people had asked for was the ability to see in the price history, when you select an item, the average cost and the average price of the item. So for those of you that know what I'm talking about, if you select an item in QuoteWorks and you bring up the price history, you can actually see what the average cost is. So this is what your typical cost is and what you're typically selling it for. So if you're not sure what you want to sell this for, you can quickly view that. So you can say, okay, typically sell it for $37.99, $99. I'm just going to go ahead and sell it for $40. That's fine. That's close enough, and then add it. So just again, a little more information in that price history, so you have that while you're kind of building your quotes. Okay, I think that's everything wanted to cover today. Like I said, we are going to be sending out email blasts with this recording, and then also a link to the website with all the features that we've released over the last year. So you'll be able to see that information. And as always, if you have any questions about any of those features, let us know. For those of you that have posted questions, just hang tight, and I will start answering those. For those of you that do not have any questions, thanks for attending. And if you do have anything that comes up later, definitely feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We're always happy to answer questions you guys may have. So thanks, everyone. And like I said, if you posted a question, just hang tight. I'm going to circle back and start going through those.